Hey, welcome to Riverside. Today we have a guy on named Freddy. He runs FreddysFlyz on Instagram, and if you go to his Instagram page, he's got fly after fly after fly that he's tied, and these are like works of art. It's just really fun to look at his page and see what he's doing. We talked about fly tying techniques, how to get started into fly tying if that's what you're interested in. We talked about faith and how faith plays into fly fishing and all this stuff. It's a really good conversation. I hope you enjoy it, but I will say the video quality, for some reason, I'm just figuring out all these technical issues, but for some reason, it wasn't the best. So if you're going to watch on YouTube, just put it on and then maybe do some dishes or tie some flies or whatever it is. Listen to it while you're going to work. But this is FreddysFlys on Instagram, and I hope you enjoy. I'm going to start recording, and we're going to see how it goes. Maybe it goes terrible. We'll find out. Well, Freddy, dude, how you?
Hopefully
it's
it
good
doesn't.
meeting you.
I was not gonna wear these, but I will. Okay. Yeah, it's good to meet you, person.
Yeah.
I watched a few of your videos. They're pretty
Oh
good.
yeah. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. I had
Yeah.
fun with it.
You bet.
So
That's good.
where you located?
I'm in northern New Jersey, way up at the very top section of the state, like minutes from New York State. Kind of in the center, toward the west, so uh, Appalachian Mountains. I mean, they're not huge, but they're so. Well, a lot of people think New Jersey is all brick and mortar. It's not.
Okay.
Not concrete. We have it's pretty nice up here. Lakes, rivers, places to hike and fish and enjoy being outside.
Sounds nice, really. Sounds really
It is
nice.
good. And is it right? You're in Tennessee?
No, I'm actually in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, Kentucky. Okay.
Yep. Born and raised here. I've been here my whole life. And the fishing down
Yeah, it
here
was.
in Louisville's not the best, but it could be worse. So,
Yeah, here it's good, but it depends what you're fishing for. We don't have a lot of like native trout like
yeah.
everywhere, like out west. So I
Yeah.
fish for warm water species mostly.
Okay. What's your
And
favorite?
it
What's
works.
like your favorite one to target?
Oh gosh, I like pickerel because they're big and I like largemouth bass. I typically will fish the river for sunfish. Like I love, they're so underrated, but I
Oh
love
yeah.
catching sunfish. And we have one called a red breast sunfish. They don't get much bigger than 5 or 6 inches, but they're the most beautiful fish ever.
Mm.
And I like to go for them in the river. They'll take the wet flies. Like in the summer, I love fishing for those guys.
I love sunfish. That's actually what I'm targeting the most this year. It's like just bluegill and panfish and sunfish. I love them. And pound for pound,
Yeah,
there's not a better fighter out there.
no, and they're just blast. But I think they're underrated. Everybody likes, the whole
Yeah.
fly fishing community is pretty trout centric.
Yes.
But there's a few guys out there that would rather fish for a bluegill and all sorts of sunfish.
Yeah.
So I'm one of them.
Oh yeah. Same here. And that's why I like. I'm sure you probably heard of Blue Line Fly Company.
Yeah.
They like one of their big things is like smallmouth bass, and it's like down
Mm.
these parts. We don't get trout here, and so having
Yeah.
somebody who actually targets smallmouth bass is pretty nice.
Yeah, we do have smallies. At the river I fish that's here, we have one of the, I think, two or three rivers that run south to north. The river I fish is called the Wallkill. And uh, and it has smallmouths, but I don't know where they're concentrated, where the larger ones are concentrated at, or I'd be going after those guys.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen some small ones, but no big ones.
Yeah. So what's like your personal best fish?
Personal best outside of saltwater, probably a 23-inch pickerel
Okay.
for
That sounds
length.
so fun.
For length, yeah. For mass, it was a largemouth bass. First time ever, I was uh It was the first year I was fishing with my kayak. I I accidentally found out that kayak fishing was a thing. I didn't know. I always thought you needed a rowboat, and then I was watching all these guys fishing out of kayaks, and I
Yeah.
said to my wife, "I've got to get a kayak." So
Yeah.
I bought a kayak, and the first we bought them in the fall, and it was the first summer I was fishing for bass in a lake right near my house, and I had this massive bass on, and I went to reach a little too far with my net, and I rolled the kayak and fell out. I lost half my gear, and but I got the fish back in the boat, and I didn't have my scale anymore, but I was able to measure. It was like 20 inches. I guess he was about 4 or 5 pounds, and that was my best bass. And then
Okay.
that best trout was like 22 inches years ago. It was stocked, but it was fun to catch.
Oh yeah, it sounds fun. Kayak fishing is fun. I tried. First time I ever did it, I was in like a little tiny river, and I ended up going around this corner, and I hit a tree, and it flipped me over. I lost my rod, brand new
Mm,
rod, lost it.
yeah.
Uh, it was a struggle, but
Hmm.
it's still fun. I love kayak fishing.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Oh, how long have you been fishing?
I could be out there all day long, all day long.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, since I was old enough to walk probably and carry a rod.
Really?
My uncle loved it, so he used to take me when I was a little tiny kid, and every chance I had. And then when I was 6 and a half, we moved to a town, um, gosh, about 45 minutes from where I live now. And while we were living there, we had a river that was, I don't know, like 5 minute walk. It was literally, and back then, your parents would let you go wherever you wanted. They didn't,
Yeah.
as long as they knew where you were. So
Yeah.
by the time I was like 8 or 9, I was going down to the river fishing by myself, and so I've been fishing as forever. I
That's
tell
really
people
cool.
if you shoot me, I'll bleed fishing.
Well, good stuff. And so you said your uncle was the main one who took you as a kid?
He started, yeah, he started. My
Okay.
dad was busy with work and other things, so my uncle took me once in a while, and we had access to some cool spots. He liked to go to a thing called paying fish, where you pay money to catch fish, and
Oh
we
yeah.
never gone there. He always talked about it, but so we used to just go to a reservoir. We used to be able to get passes to this reservoir, and it was really just bluegills and you know, pumpkin seed, sunfish, but they were a blast to catch. I'd catch them all day, and
Oh yeah.
you just love it.
Now was that fly fishing back then, or when did you get into fly fishing?
Oh, I tried fly fishing in my teens, my
Okay.
early teens, and but I never got traction with it. I was tying flies too, but it was hard to find materials, and
Okay.
we didn't have the internet. We had some books and magazines, but I just never really got traction. And I also am a drummer, so I was into drumming too. And I mean, how many things can a kid do, right?
That's pretty cool.
Um, so the fly fishing took a back seat to music and to my spin fishing.
Okay.
And then I picked fly fishing back up in 2015, but I really got serious in 2018, tying and fishing.
Okay. And so, well, that's what attracted me to you. I saw
There's
your
quite a
page
delay.
on Instagram, and it just blows my mind how. I mean, it's just amazing. Your flies are very precise. They're very well done, very delicate. It's artwork. It really is. At that point, you're making art with flies, and it blows my mind. And yeah,
Well, thank you. Sorry, but there's kind of a delay in our meeting. But
yeah, I think it's
yeah,
on
I
my end.
appreciate the comment, the kind words there. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, well, thank you for that. I've always been like meticulous. I like fine work. And so the fly tying and what you see in Instagram are I tie them like that. I fish with flies like that, but I'm not as always so careful to make it perfect because the fish don't care. They'd rather have a beat up fly. But the
Hmm.
flies for Instagram, while I'll tie the same flies and fish them, I make every wrap count twice for the Instagram photos.
Okay.
And then I'll tie another, half dozen or, make a half dozen and they'll go in my box or they'll go in a box over there and I'll donate them to like Casting for Recovery or some other organization. There's a bunch out there that auction flies off and get money for their cause, so that's good. I can't possibly fish all the flies I tie.
Oh, but
Too many.
how many flies do you tie a day?
Oh, I don't tie a lot in a day. I tie like a few a week for Instagram, but once in a while I'll tie. Oh, like last night I tied a half a dozen for one of my boxes, and there's times I have an Etsy fly shop, a fly. I sell flies on an Etsy shop.
Okay,
So when I get busy tying for that, I'll tie dozens and dozens, and then just they'll sit and wait for orders. So I'm not tying per order. So
okay,
I've tied the number of flies in my day.
fair
The more
enough.
you tie, the better you get. I tell everybody that repetition is important.
Yes, and that's like I'm a noob when it comes to fly tying and all that stuff. I started fly fishing back in 2020, but before that it was spin fishing. But I got into fly tying this past year, and it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But
Yeah.
it's fun. It calms me down. It's something I can really focus on. But it's a joy. It really is.
Yeah. I could say is if you find it hard, figure out what the hard part is. I was tying flies last week with pheasant tail. They were nymphs, pheasant tail nymphs, and I remember when I was having so much trouble getting it on. And it just boils down to, like I said before, repetition. You get used to how the materials work. That's a really important step in fly tying and getting good at it is understanding how the materials behave when you wrap them on a hook, how everything behaves. Everything's got its own kind of thing going on. And one material will work different than another. And, pheasant tail,
Okay.
you get used to wrapping it, you get used to how you have to wrap it, how many fibers maybe to use. And eventually it just becomes more of a second nature than a hassle. Um, but like if you're gonna try to tie pheasant tail nymphs, I'd say try to tie 10 or a dozen or 2 dozen, tie a bunch. Um, because that's where you're gonna really get used to how everything goes together. But you can always reach out to me too. And if you
Well,
need a
yeah.
hand, always.
Not Yeah. Now that we've made this
Yeah,
connection, I'll have to keep that in mind. I'll probably hit you up with a bunch of questions every day. What am I doing wrong?
yeah, we could tie together one night.
We should. We
We
should. That'd be
could
really
this
fun.
one
That'd be
night and
awesome.
tie together. I've done that with a guy willing. I don't know why. Yeah. I don't know why he was shocked that I was willing to do it, but I was. He's like, we should tie sometime. I said, what about this week? He's like, really? I was kidding around. I'm like, I'm not. So we got I think we did it over Instagram. I don't even remember. No, it wasn't Instagram because that would have been live. But we did it, and it was a lot of fun.
It sounds like
A
fun. We
lot
should
of
definitely do that.
fun.
That'd be a good time.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
so what are your like? If you were talking to a noob, which is me, when it comes to flight time, like what are some of the best places to learn the techniques?
I started watching videos on YouTube, lots and lots of videos, and there's some you'll find as you watch them who's the better tires are, who to watch. Now, I'm going to tell you that when I go to learn something, so I do woodworking also, photography, woodworking. I got a bunch of hobbies, but um, I always tend to watch the guys that are I consider them like way out of my league.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
there's no way I'll ever get that good. I tell myself that, but because if you watch those guys, then you're kind of setting yourself up not for failure, but you're going to learn from the best. Now, there's so many great tires that have videos online and YouTube that you kind of just will find somebody that you find teaches well. Now, what I found early on was there's so many tires that will tie a pattern, but they're not explaining the real techniques, which is what a new person needs to learn. They're very much about the pattern. Here's the material, I'm putting it on. Here's the material, I'm putting it on. They're not explaining a lot about the techniques to get the material on more than they are
Okay.
the materials themselves, which is like, okay, that helps if you want to learn how to tie a pattern you've never tied before. But it doesn't help if you're new and you're learning how to tie. You really need somebody to show you the techniques. And just remember this: one person's technique works for that person, it might not work exactly the same for you. You might be tying the same pattern, the same materials, and find this works better for you doing it this way or something. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's you get all the materials on a fly, it stays together, you catch a few fish and your fly holds up, you're done. So
Okay.
a lot of people get, like it has to be 2 wraps this way, 3 wraps that way. It's not all about that.
Okay.
Just there always need that many wraps of thread, but it really depends what you're tying down. And I might do
Okay.
2 in front, 2 behind, and that's enough to clip the material off. The material's not going anywhere if you tie it in well. So, but like I said, you just keep repeating. You'll get used to how everything reacts to what you're doing, and you'll get used to it.
Okay.
So videos, yeah, videos online. I mean, I could
Okay.
send you a list of the guys I would say to watch if you're starting.
Okay. And so, how do you know? Because of course, there's certain flies that you want to tie for certain times of the year, especially like different hatches and stuff like that. How do you know? I guess it would it be entomology? Would that be entomology? It's bugs, right?
Yeah, and yeah, entomology is the study of the insects, and I'm gonna admit I'm not great at that. I know
Okay.
a few of them, but I usually fish attractor patterns. I'll fish some of the other flies, but like, we're not fishing for fish that really care. If we're fishing for bluegills and sunfish, they want a bug. If it
Yeah.
looks like a bug to them, they're gonna eat it. I've
Yeah.
caught my first trout ever on a fly that, well, it probably does resemble a bug. But I've caught trout on flies that don't resemble anything that swims. That nothing God created looks like
Okay.
that fly, but the fish eat it anyway because it looks like food. So they don't really, not all fish care. And I think, and they call it highly pressured waters where these trout fishermen go and they're bent on having the right, matching the hatch exactly. And I don't fish those waters, and it might be absolutely the truth. Where if you can't match the hatch, the fish are just not going to look at it. And
Yeah.
in that case, what you would do is every area that you go to you'll be able to find a hatch chart, they call it. Just look
Okay.
up the river you're fishing and look up hatch chart, and you'll find a list of all the hatches, what time of year that hatch will be supposedly. I mean, there was something flying around all outside my house today, and it's March, but it was warm, so the bugs are
Hmm.
confused, I guess. But there was something all around in the air. Out by the river, anything flying around by the river. I turned over some rocks. Water's still ice cold, but I was expecting to see some stone flies or something, but I didn't. And
Hmm.
so I left a couple of flies in the trees, and I left.
Hey, sometimes those are the best days, though. I don't know what it
Yeah,
is, but getting skunked isn't as bad as they say it is.
no, I got one little shiner about what's that, 3.5, 4 inches long. They take flies. I don't care what eats my flies. If it's a fish, it's a fish.
That's how
So
I am. And I feel like, when I first got into fly fishing, I was like, oh, I got to get like the trout. I got to go after that. Or like, I want to get the smallmouth bass. But anymore, it's like, just if it's a fish is a fish. It's fun. If you
yeah.
caught a fish, it's a good day.
Hmm.
And it's as simple as that. But I don't know. I feel like people can get so caught up into well, I have to get the big bass or like the big trout and go after this. And like, it's like, no, just go out there and have fun. That's the point.
Yeah. I was on the river I frequent, and it's only about 10 minutes away. And I remember catching a sunfish on a fly that was so small, I was surprised that it was able to inhale the fly. It was the tiniest thing. And I took a picture of it, and it was literally like half, like, I don't know, 2/3 the width of my palm. So small. And I like my personal best littlest fish. And I was so excited to catch that thing. And I careful to release it. And I almost always fish with a barbless hook on the
Yeah.
rivers, and they come right off, and sent him on his way. But I was so excited to catch my personal smallest fish, as much as I am, the biggest fish. Doesn't matter.
Oh
They're
yeah.
all exciting. They're all exciting.
So how does your faith play into your fishing, or your fishing play into your faith? Because obviously that's one of the biggest things that attracted me to you was your fellow believer in Christ, and
Yeah.
it's always fun to meet new believers. But how does your fly fishing and fly tying play into your faith?
Well, when it started, it didn't start as like anything to do with faith. It's just that I love, what I love. But then as I started tying, well, when I opened up my Instagram account, you put a biography or something. And the first thing I wrote was, I follow Jesus. I'm a family man and whatever else I got in there, a couple other hobbies I do. And then, you know, I thought about it and I was like, oh, what if somebody sees that? They might not want to follow me. And then I'm like, well, they don't have to. But what they have to do is if they look, they'll see that I'm a follower. Then they can decide what they want. Um, and because he comes first, that's it. And what I found over the years is that more people, I've met so many awesome Christian anglers, men and women, because of my tagline in there. And
Hmm.
so I've got to pray for people. I've got to share with people. I mean, it's incredible where it can take you. I've mentioned the Bible. I mean, I'm not always dropping Bible verses all over everything because it depends. I mean, we could go into a whole talk about evangelism and things, and
Hmm.
maybe for another day.
Yeah.
But before I came to Christ, I had people I knew well trying to evangelize me, and the way they did it was just turn me off. So I kind of just put that out there and started tying flies on Instagram, started getting some popularity. And believe me, the limelight is not somewhere I like to be. People like what they see, they give you a follow, and so my account grew. Um, but it's the cool thing is that I do get to share when I do have opportunities to share. And it's often when somebody I find out they're hurt, because people will post like if you look at my feed, you'll see it's all flies and a Merry Christmas here and a happy whatever, but it's mostly all flies. I don't just put everything out there, but some people's Instagram accounts are their lives, right? And you can see everything and they share whatever, and there's nothing wrong with it. Um,
Cool.
and I remember a guy had posted a picture of his foot in a cast, and it looked pretty like a severe thing happened to his foot. So I reached out, and I said, "Hey, Pat, you posted a picture of your foot. Um, how can I pray for you?" I said, I'm going to pray for you, but if you need any specific prayer, let me know. Because a lot of people will say, "Hey, I'll pray for you," but
Hmm.
you know, I ask people once I'm comfortable enough if they have a specific prayer, like
Yeah.
a certain whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know. And and I think it's so cool because people, whether they appreciate knowing they're prayed for. I think people just appreciate knowing they're cared for and somebody cares
Yeah.
is so
Absolutely.
important. And and how could we not care when we know how much Jesus cares for us and God cares for us, right? It should just we should just be emulating him all the time. So it's given me a platform to do that um in certain ways. And then he's come up quite a bit.
Well, that's the thing.
And then
If you're looking, the opportunities will show themselves, and there'll be times when you can
oh,
pray with people and
absolutely.
minister to people, and just even it doesn't matter what you're doing. And that's what's cool
Hmm.
about the way God set everything up with Christianity and evangelism is you don't have to be a minister in order to minister to people. As a matter of fact, I would argue that
Right.
the most effective ministry comes from people who aren't ministers, and the reason for that is because
Hmm.
if you're a minister at your job, This is my
Hmm.
job. This is what I do every day. Of course, I'm going to tell you about Jesus. But if you have somebody who's an accountant or a teacher, whatever it is, and they're on fire for Christ, it's a whole different level in people's heads because this isn't just their job, even though it's not for me. But this isn't just their job. This isn't just it's they're really serious about their faith and they truly love Jesus. And for some
Hmm.
reason, that clicks with people a lot better than if you're a minister. And so, honestly, sometimes, uh, I find that you have better opportunities to minister and reach out to people if you are not a minister. Because I was a cop for a while, I was a dispatcher, and I can't tell you how many times we got to pray for people and pray over people as they're going through crazy stuff. But the opportunities will show themselves time and time again, and it's really cool to see. Um,
Exactly. There was a time my father and I weren't really, really close and tight growing up, when I was growing up, because like I said before, he was super busy a lot. But later in his life, he was living with a second wife, not my mom, his stepmom. And then that kind of situation was weird for him. And I wanted my dad, I was already, a Christian and I wanted my dad. I was born and raised in a Jewish family. And
okay.
um and I wanted to have my dad back. I wanted my dad. So never really had him, but I was learning about God the Father, and it was really confusing because here's God the Father that loves you so much, and I knew my dad loved me, but he was never there all the time for me, right? Um, like we're talking about fishing. I can't can count on one hand the number of times I went fishing with him, outside of being on vacation and him taking me deep sea fishing. But anyway, we were sitting at a restaurant one night, and he said to me, "Freddie, um, I know." Oh no, he called me one night. That was it. I'm sorry. He called me one night on the phone, and I was usually the one to call him, but he called me. He says, Freddie, I like to read a lot of books on history, like Abraham Lincoln and guys that made it rich and all that stuff. I said, yeah, you got books everywhere. I know. I wish I read as much as you read. I read all these technology books and stuff that's just pretty much reference, but you like to read, yeah. I said, what do you got? Where are you going with that? He says, I think I should be reading a different book. I said, what book? He said, the Bible. I said, I think you should be reading the Bible too. So I'm gonna buy you a Bible.
Oh yeah.
So I did. And then so I bought him a Bible and we went out to dinner again and I gave him the Bible and he said, I don't know if it was that night, but he had said to me, he said, I want what you have. And and it took me by surprise. I'm like, what do I have, Dad? He says, You're I never knew you to like love life and just be so full of encouragement and all these things that I see in you. And just like, when things you say come against you or, troubles, you've always seemed to be okay. And I've been a mess and I don't know what to do. I said, and the Bible's your place, Dad. And you said before we never know who we're going to touch, but I think when we're born again and we act out as Christians in our lives, the way Jesus wants us to and the way the Bible teaches us to, you don't have to tell somebody. People will see it in you, and you become attractive in a certain way, and they don't understand why yet until they do find out. But we should be. That's the witness, and we should be those witnesses. I mean, so my dad became a Christian before he passed away within 2 years. And it was great. I remember the day he accepted Christ and it blew my mind. Not that he did it, it just blew my mind
Yeah.
because God's so good. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so we never know, but like you said, not everybody's going to be an evangelist, but every one of us that believes can even plant seeds without realizing we're doing that. So I think planting seeds is important as you know, sharing a message. It's the sharing the message, plant seeds. It's all his work through us, all of it, every bit of it.
And I think that, yeah, I agree 100%. And I think that sometimes I know I fall into the trap of thinking like planting a seed isn't good enough, but it is. It really is, because
Hmm.
you plant a seed and let the Holy Spirit do the work, and he does all the
Hmm.
work anyways. But sometimes I have this idea where I need to convince somebody, and
That's right.
I need to pull them this way, and it's you don't. You love people, you tell them the truth,
Mm.
and it's really that simple. And you know, be open and honest about your faith and whatever. But it it's not about convincing anybody. It's just about loving them and being a light and planting that seed. And like I said, the
Mm.
Spirit will grow it. And then at that point, it's just fun to watch. Really,
Yeah.
I mean, at that point,
If
you
you
get to
think,
watch this. It's
yeah,
amazing. It really is.
it
But
is. Because if you think about it, we aren't gonna be convincing anybody. If you think about your own salvation, right? Who convinced you? Not a person.
yeah,
The Holy Spirit did.
yep,
There's nothing else, and it's God's job. Even the angels, tells us right in the Bible, the angels can't get anybody saved.
yeah,
So
and
it's all up to us to plant seeds.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's this question that's often asked within like apologetics of like, you know, if God's real, why won't He show us? If God's real, why won't He reveal Himself to us? I think part of that is because of the faith element. Because
Hmm.
if He showed us, then where's the faith there? But at some point, you have to take that step, and you have to
Yeah.
make a decision. And Holy Spirit's a huge part of that. But you have to make that decision of, I believe in Jesus. I believe in God, and I
Hmm.
believe He's real and all that stuff, and I'm gonna follow Him. And there's gonna come a point where every knee
Yeah.
will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, and that's gonna be the day when He reveals Himself to us. But until then, it's a
Exactly.
matter of faith. You know, it's a matter of faith, and man, what a thing to
Yeah.
behold! It
And
really is.
it is. And I'll tell you what, sometimes that faith is hard. I've been doing this for 21 years, 22 years now,
Okay.
walking in faith. And there's been trying times in our lives, sicknesses. My wife was in a terrible car accident. Thank God survived. And then all these things, job losses and all these things. And my mother has Alzheimer's right now. And my wife's mom has fell and so what I'm getting at is like, I'm in a shower and I'm praying to God, I'm praising him and I'm praying and I'm saying, God, you're this big, huge God. You can part the Red Sea, or you have parted the Red Sea. You've done this, you've done that, you've done this. And yet sometimes these things that seem so simple to me, you know, aren't like done like that. And then I think, and then you hear all the people saying all the, like if I'm in this conversation with somebody and they'll say all those, you'll hear all those trite remarks, well, he's building you up for something bigger. And you'll hear all those things you expect to hear, all that Christianese. And while it's all, fine and dandy and it probably is truth, I keep questioning him, not another person. I keep questioning him. And, I've heard some things like, because like this is all on your plate, Freddie, because you can handle it. Nobody else could. So I'm handing it to you. And I called you to do this. And
Hmm.
you'll see. Sometimes we like, but we got a timeline. Like our life. Here's the beginning, let's say. Try to do this. And here's the end of our lives, right? And it's our whole life along this line. And we might be somewhere in the middle, but God knows what's all out here. We don't, right? Here's an example. I had a job I lost. I was working for the company for 10 years.
Hmm.
I was freelancing and I was making good money freelancing. And while I was freelancing, the company had me doing something I never did before. I was writing software. And it was writing software using geocoding and all this stuff for tracking vehicles. And long story short, when it came time to look for a job, the job I got because I had learned that stuff while I was freelancing.
Hmm.
So I got to believe that God put all that, on my plate. gave me the freelancing work, gave me this experience so I could land that next job. And when you look back, you can see how where God was working in your life. But while we're in the middle of it and having a hard time with certain things, we often will like, why God? Why God? And like, you got to be patient. He says, be
Hmm.
patient, and then you'll find out one day.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a student last night. He's actually a college student now. Name's Cole. I love him. He's great. And like, especially over the last few years, we've gotten closer. But um, he came up and asked me the question that he was thinking about the other day, and it was, how do you know if something in your life is a blessing or like a curse, or how do you know if it's from God or if it's from Satan? And my answer is, I don't think you can until later down the road. I think time will tell. Because there are certain things,
Hmm.
like let's say you got a job promotion, right? And it turns out you think it's God, giving you this job promotion. It turns out it's a curse, and it takes you away from your family. It takes you away from all your friends, and all your time is taken up with this job, and it ends up being a really bad thing. Well, was that really from God? Maybe he was testing you. Maybe not. Maybe it was from Satan,
Hmm.
and vice versa. Maybe you have a door slammed in your face, and you're like, man, this is Satan working. Like he's just trying to keep me down. But 10 years later down the road, it's like, wait a second, that actually turned out to be a really good thing. And it's like, only time can tell whether something's a blessing or a curse in your life, whether it's from God or whether it's from Satan. And I think of like my wife, when got out of high school, I graduated in 2012. I wanted to go into the military. I wanted to go Air Force. That's what my dad did, my grandpa, my uncles and cousins, and I was next. And that's like what I thought I was like destined to do because my whole family did it. And I
Hmm.
remember I applied, and I finally went through the whole process. I got a call, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't want you. You have ADHD. We're not going to accept you." And I was
Hmm.
devastated. I mean, I was shook into my. I was like this is my whole plan. Like this is my whole
Oh
life.
yeah.
What do I like? What do I do? Like this is all I wanted to
Hmm.
do, and uh, it turns out to be a great thing. Because if I had done that, I would have never met my wife. I wouldn't be where I am today as a youth minister. I wouldn't have been I was a cop for a while and I loved that portion of my life. Would have never done any of that. And so at the end of the day, that thing that I thought was this devastating blow to life turned out to be such a good thing. And it's like you can never
Hmm.
know until you get down the road, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, hindsight's 2020. That was actually a good thing. But yeah,
Oh, yeah.
well, go ahead.
Do you take something hard? We could.
You're breaking up. Hey, there you are. Can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Awesome. Let me do this real quick. Go figure. Um,
It's broken up, but I see you again.
there we go. I can edit all that out. It'll look normal ish. But yeah, it's like,
Okay.
you can never know
All
until
right. Well,
down
we'll
the
see.
road when whether. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'll leave it to you. Now, what I was saying before was that we could go around with life and we can say, this is from God, this is from the enemy, keep it or chuck it. One of the guys I did a Bible study with for 15 years, I love this story. He said, well, if you're getting it and you know where it's coming from and it ain't God, stamp it, return to sender, and
That's pretty good.
send it all back. But what I'm getting at is that I think the closer we are to God and know Christ through the Word, the easier it is to discern between what's Him and what's not Him.
Yeah.
And then when there's a doubt in your mind, still uh, err on the side of safety. But you know, but be careful. I mean, there's a lot of people I have heard where, they blame the devil for everything. And
Yeah.
while it's easy to do and people want to because the devil is nasty, it's not always the devil's fault. But I think we really got to know who God is. We got to know his word and stand on it like crazy. Like
Yeah.
when something starts to shake you, you have to know, like, not think. It's got to be in your heart. You got to know what's either scripture to pull out or whatever it takes to stay grounded and stay on your feet because you don't want to fall.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I won't take too much more of your time. We're at about 30, 40 minutes now. But I did want to say this as I was looking at your page, FreddysFlys. By the way, for anybody listening, uh, let's look it up. It's no, no, no. It is at FreddysFlys. It's FreddysFlyz on Instagram. So anybody listening can go look you up. But as I'm looking at your page, I kept on being reminded of this one passage, Ephesians 2:10. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared ahead of time for us to do. And then, like I said, as I'm looking at your page, I see all these flies and all these. I mean, like I said, they're really pieces of art. They're just so fine tuned and they're so. I mean, just beautiful. They really are. And I'm just reminded of that passage and how it's almost like an analogy or a metaphor for this. You know, these flies are, you put so much time and effort and thought into them, and you think about how they're going to swim and how they're going to look to the fish and everything, and so much work goes into it.
Mm.
Same thing is for us. When God creates us, he thought about it. He designed us. It was this thing where he put care and all this stuff into, and not only that, but he did that knowing that we were to go out into the world and to make disciples for him. And it's the perfect illustration for how God created us, is this thing about, you know, these flies and all that stuff. And I had to share that with you because, like I said, as I'm looking at your page, I actually couldn't get it out of my head.
Well, I appreciate it. God gives us the gifts and talents that we have, and I think it's a shame for anybody to not use them, and especially to not use them and give him the glory in it. So I think if you don't know what your gifts are, there are ways to find them. God gave me the gift to use my hands to create things, and so it's all I've been doing. In fact, if I find a period of time where I'm not creating things, I get stir crazy. I got to be
Yeah,
making something, building something, or
yeah, me
designing
too.
something. So I got to be doing it. But like I said, when I'm out fishing, I see his glory in it all. When I look at
Mm.
the images, and by the way, any of the images that I've shot that you like, if you want to use them for any of your campaigns or anything you
I'll
want to
take you up
use
on that.
for your ministry,
Yeah,
you don't need to ask. Just go ahead and blast them around.
I will absolutely. Yeah, I'll take you up on that. I'll make sure to tag you. But yeah, man, Freddie,
Yeah,
it was good meeting you. I'm glad we did. Now we have a new friendship that hopefully lasts a long time. So thanks for coming on the
yeah,
podcast, and it was a
sure
joy.
will.
We'll have to do it again sometime. And
It'll last
hey,
long.
yeah, I will say, when you want to tie flies, let me know and we'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, we'll have a little better connection than this. Or be like,
Hopefully so. Like I said, I'm in my church, and this is
yeah,
the Wi-Fi is not the best here, but I'm gonna have to talk to our lead minister and be like, hey, we got to figure something out because this isn't working quite so much.
okay,
If I was at my house, it would be.
all
We got
right.
that what is it, fiber? The fiber stuff, and that stuff is so fast, it's
Oh yeah,
insane.
fiber optic.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't even have fiber optic, but it's pretty fast here. No, it might be fiber optic at the bottom of the hill. I think I'm
Yeah.
copper for about 500, 600 yards, and then it's fiber optic after it.
Okay. Well, man,
Anyway,
once
we'll be in
again,
touch.
yeah, man, I,
Good to
I
meet
appreciate you coming on. I'll talk to you soon.
you back. Good to meet you, man.
You too, bro. Bye.
Ciao, brother.